A human kneels before the alien queen. The grand hall of the Zarian Empire was silent. Thousands of alien warriors stood in armor. Their tall bodies were covered in silver scales. Their yellow eyes glowed under the high ceiling lights. No one spoke. No one moved. All eyes were on the small figure standing at the center. He was a human. His clothes were torn. His face was tired. Blood was dry on his hands. Still, he stood tall. His name was Jackson Reed, and he had come alone from Earth. At the far end of the hall, sitting on a throne of black stone, was the alien queen. She was tall and beautiful, with long blue hair that moved like water. Her crown was made of gold and fire crystals. Her eyes were sharp. She did not smile. Her name was Queen Varia, ruler of the Zarian Empire. Jackson took one step forward. The guards raised their weapons, but the queen lifted her hand. "Let him speak," she said. Jackson dropped to one knee. The sound echoed through the huge hall. "I came here," he said, his voice clear, "to ask for your hand in marriage." Gasps filled the room. Then came the laughter. Alien generals laughed so hard they held their stomachs. One warrior fell to the floor, hitting his fist and shouting, "A human! The queen's mate! That's a joke." But Queen Varia did not laugh. She rose slowly from her throne and walked toward him. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. Her long cloak moved behind her like a shadow. She stopped just one step in front of him. "You asked to marry me," she said coldly. "Yes," Jackson replied. "I know it sounds crazy, but I'm not here to fight. I'm here for peace." The queen narrowed her eyes. "You are weak. Your people are broken. Why would I choose you?" Jackson looked up. His eyes were calm. They held no fear. And that's when the queen paused. She looked deep into his eyes. There was something strange about them. Something old. Something powerful. It was not human pride. It was not foolish hope. It was something else. Something she could not name. For the first time, she was silent. "You're not the first human to stand before me," she said, "but you are the first to kneel without fear." Jackson stayed quiet. He didn't need to speak more. His eyes spoke for him. "Do you even know who I am?" the queen asked. "Yes," Jackson said. "You are the most powerful ruler in this galaxy. But power is not everything. I came because I saw more in you than a throne." The hall went quiet again. The laughter stopped. The queen stepped back. "You are either brave," she said, "or stupid." "Maybe both," Jackson answered. Some of the guards looked confused. Others were angry. A few were curious. Queen Varia turned to her court. "This human comes into our world. He makes a request no one has ever made. He risks death. And yet, he does not shake." She looked at him again. "Why?" Jackson finally stood. "I once saved a child," he said. "An alien girl who was hurt during a war. She cried like a human. She bled like a human. And in that moment, I saw something. We are not so different." He stepped forward. "I don't want another war. I want peace. I want to show the galaxy a different way." The queen was quiet. Then she smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was sharp, like a knife. "If you want my hand," she said, "then you must pass the trial of blood." The hall roared. Guards slammed their weapons. The floor shook. The aliens cheered. Jackson didn't move. "What is the trial of blood?" The queen walked back to her throne. "You will fight. You will bleed. And if you survive, maybe then I will hear your proposal again." Jackson nodded. "Then I accept." The queen sat down slowly. Her eyes stayed on him. And deep inside, for reasons she did not understand, she whispered to herself, "There is something in his eyes." His answer leaves the court in silence. The heavy doors slammed shut behind him. Jackson stood alone in the stone chamber. The floor was marked with red symbols. The walls were made of dark crystal. Strange lights flickered across the surface like living fire. It was quiet, but not peaceful. He was inside the chamber of truth, a sacred place where only one thing mattered: the truth of your soul. A voice echoed from nowhere. Before you face the trial of blood, the Queen demands your reason. Speak it now, or die with your silence. Jackson looked around. He could feel eyes watching him, though he saw no one. I already told her my reason, he said calmly. I want peace. I want unity between our worlds. The voice returned, deeper this time. That is not enough. The floor glowed beneath his feet. A circle of blue fire surrounded him. A figure appeared in the flames, tall, thin, wearing a hood of smoke. It was the Truth Seer. No one lied to the Truth Seer. No one ever left its presence unchanged. You love her, the Seer said, its voice low and slow. But why? Jackson took a deep breath. He could feel the heat of the flames rise around him. I saw her once, years ago, he said. On the screen. She was leading her army through war zones. Everyone said she was ruthless. But I saw something in her eyes. A kind of pain. Like she didn't want to be a monster, but had no choice. The Truth Seer tilted its head. You fell for her image. No, Jackson said. I fell for the moment when I saw she was still, human inside, or something close to it. The flames flickered. I knew I would never be enough. Jackson continued. I'm just a man, from a broken planet. But I couldn't stop thinking. What if someone showed her something different? What if love could reach where war could not? He looked up into the Seer's glowing eyes. So I came, alone, unarmed, to give her my heart, even if she crushed it. The room went silent. The flames turned green. The Seer took one slow step forward. You passed. Then it vanished. The fire went out. The walls opened, and the Queen herself stepped through. She stood in silence, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. You still live, she said softly. Jackson nodded. And you still wish to marry me? She asked, folding her arms. I do. She walked slowly around him, like a hunter circling its prey. My court laughed, she said. They still do. But I do not. Jackson watched her carefully. There was something different in her voice. Not cold. Not cruel. Just unsure. I've ruled for 200 years, Queen Varia said. I've crushed planets, broken kings, but never have I been proposed to by a human. She stopped and looked into his eyes again. Why do you look at me like that? She asked, almost whispering. Because you are more than what you pretend to be, Jackson said. The words hit her like thunder. For a second, she forgot who she was. But then the door behind them opened, and a loud voice filled the hall. Your Majesty, the trial of blood is ready. Queen Varia turned without a word and walked toward the door. Come, she said. Let the blood speak. Scene change. The arena. The trial arena was carved into a mountain. Tens of thousands of aliens filled the seats, shouting, chanting, waiting for blood. Jackson stood at the center. No armor, no sword, just his fists and his will. Opposite him stood the trial beast, 10 feet tall, covered in black iron skin, with glowing red eyes and razor teeth. It had been made in a lab to destroy anything it touched. The gates closed. The crowd fell silent. The Queen stood in a high balcony, her face calm, but her hands tight around the edge of her throne. The beast roared. Jackson did not move. Fight. Human. Someone shouted. Die quickly. Another laughed. But Jackson simply whispered, I don't want to hurt you. The beast charged. Jackson dodged, barely missing the claws. The crowd screamed for blood, but he didn't attack. Instead, Jackson looked into the beast's eyes. I'm not your enemy, he said softly. The beast paused, confused. No one had ever spoken to it before. It lunged again. This time, Jackson caught its wrist. He was strong for a human, but not strong enough. The beast pushed him down, snarling. And then Jackson let go. He opened his arms. The arena gasped. He closed his eyes and whispered, "If this is the only way, then I accept my end." The beast raised its claw, but stopped. It stared at him. The queen stood up, confused. The beast looked around, then slowly backed away. It dropped to its knees beside Jackson. The arena exploded in noise. The queen's generals shouted, "He cheated." Others yelled, "No, the beast chose him." Queen Varia's voice cut through the chaos. Silence. The arena froze. She looked down at Jackson, still kneeling beside the beast, and once again she saw his eyes. Not proud, not scared, just real. She turned to her people. "He passed," she said, "with no blade, with no blood. He passed, because even the monster trusted him." And for the first time in Zarian history, a human left the arena alive. He fights the monster she created. The wind outside the arena howled like a ghost from another world. Inside the queen's private chamber, the air was still. Queen Varia stood at the tall crystal window, her arms crossed behind her back. She stared down at the arena floor, where just an hour ago, a human had done the unthinkable. He had survived the trial of blood. But more than that, the beast had knelt before him. It was impossible. The creature was called Gorthar, and it was her creation. Many years ago, Varia had ordered her royal scientists to make the perfect weapon. Not just to kill, but to feel no mercy. Gorthar was born from rage and pain, stitched together from the DNA of a dozen warrior beasts, trained only to destroy. No one, not even her top generals, had ever lasted more than a minute in the pit. And yet, Jackson Reed, a fragile, unarmored human, had survived. Not by killing, not by running, but by speaking to it. Viria pressed her fingers to her temples. Something about this human disturbed her. He wasn't strong. He wasn't fast. And yet, he had changed something. Elsewhere, in the healing room, Jackson sat on a cold metal bench. A Zarian healer touched a glowing stone to the bruises on his ribs. The pain faded, but Jackson didn't seem to notice. His mind was still in the arena. He remembered the way Gorthar had stared into his eyes. It wasn't just confusion. It wasn't animal fear. It was recognition. Like the beast had seen something in him. "I felt it," Jackson whispered. "Like we shared the same pain." The healer looked at him strangely but said nothing. The door opened. 2 guards stepped in. "The queen wants to see you," one said. Seen, back in the throne room. The hall was quieter now. Only the queen, her closest advisors, and a few silent guards were present. Jackson entered, standing straight, his face calm but alert. Queen Varia watched him with a curious expression. "You have surprised me," she said. "I didn't come here to surprise anyone," Jackson replied. "I came to tell the truth." She studied him in silence. "You know that beast was created in our labs, built only for war." "Yes," Jackson said, "but everything born in pain still wants peace." Varia raised an eyebrow. "Do you really believe that?" "I do, because I was born in war too." The court stirred. Whispers passed between the generals. Varia stepped down from her throne. She walked toward him slowly, her long cloak brushing the floor. "You keep saying strange things, human," she said. "And yet, your eyes speak more than your words." She circled him once more, her voice now quieter. "My scientists studied you after the arena. They ran scans, tests." Jackson didn't flinch. She stopped in front of him. "There's something strange in your blood," she said. "Something not fully human." The room went silent. Even Jackson blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" "You carry markers, old genes, connected to the Zarian race," Varia said. "Long buried, almost lost. But they are there." Jackson shook his head. "That's not possible. I was born on Earth. My family, my people, are human. Viria stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. Long ago, before your species rose, our ancestors visited your world. They left traces behind, a forgotten seed. And now, one of those seeds has grown. Jackson stared at her. Are you saying I'm part Zarian? More than part, she whispered. You may carry royal blood. A sharp gasp came from one of the generals. Another stepped forward in anger. This is madness, he shouted, a half-human, claiming royal blood. He didn't claim it, the Queen said firmly. We discovered it. Jackson looked at her, confused. What does this mean? Viria turned and walked back to her throne. It means your presence here is not an accident, she said. You were meant to come, meant to awaken something lost. Jackson stepped forward. And what do you want from me now? The Queen looked into his eyes again. Those strange, calm, deep eyes, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't know the answer. I don't know, she whispered. Scene shift. Gorthar's cage. Far below the palace, in the cold steel chambers where monsters were kept, Gorthar sat alone. The guards stood outside the glass, watching nervously. The beast hadn't moved in hours. But inside the cage, something was changing. Gorthar held a small piece of cloth. A scrap of Jackson's tunic. It sniffed it, held it close to its chest. And then, for the first time in its entire existence, it wept. One of the guards turned pale. Did you see that? He whispered. The beast is crying. The Queen's memory. That night, Queen Viria sat alone in her chamber. She remembered her childhood. She remembered a story her mother used to tell. A story about a time when Zarians lived in peace with a race from a green-blue world. A race that vanished. A bond that was broken. She always thought it was a myth. Until now. She looked at the stars beyond her balcony. And she whispered to herself, what if he is the bridge? The secret of his eyes is revealed. The sky above Zaria turned violet as the twin suns dipped behind the black mountains. The palace lights shimmered like stars on earth, except colder, brighter, sharper. Jackson stood on a marble balcony, overlooking the empire that once hated his kind. Now, it watched him in silence. He gripped the stone railing, his knuckles white. Royal blood. That word echoed in his head again and again. He had come to ask for the Queen's hand. He thought he was chasing peace. A dream. A chance to stop a war before it started again. But now, he was part of something deeper. Something ancient. His blood, his very existence, was rewriting history, and someone didn't want that to happen. Shadows within the court. Deep within the palace, two generals stood in the war room. Maps of Earth and Zarian space blinked on holographic screens. He must die, whispered General Korvac, his sharp teeth clenched, before the people start asking questions. But the Queen, the other began. Korvac slammed his claw on the table. The Queen is confused. He has bewitched her. Look at her eyes. She hesitates, and hesitation is weakness. But if he truly carries royal blood, then it's a mistake of nature, Korvac hissed. An error that must be corrected. He looked up at the glowing orb that tracked Jackson's location. Tonight, he said, the stars will lose their human guest. The oracle chamber. The Queen's steps echoed as she walked deeper into the mountain, below the palace, into the ancient heart of Zaria. Few had entered the oracle chamber in the last century. A glowing pool sat in the center of the room. Mist floated above its surface, and stars seemed to shimmer inside it. The oracle, a timeless figure made of crystal and bone, waited for her. I need to know the truth, Queen Viria said, about the human. The oracle did not speak. It simply raised one hand and pointed to the water. The Queen stepped forward and stared into it. The mist moved. She saw Earth, green and blue. Then ships, Zarian ships, hovering in its sky thousands of years ago. She saw Zarian explorers planting seeds, a small child with glowing eyes born to a human mother, a hidden legacy, a broken bond. And then she saw Jackson, his eyes glowing gold in the vision, not like a weapon, not like a king, but like a bridge between galaxies. Her breath caught in her throat. The vision ended. "It is true," she whispered. The oracle nodded once. Queen Varaya turned away, but her heart beat faster than ever before. Jackson's quarters, assassins in the dark. Jackson woke with a start. Something was wrong. The lights were still dim. The air was too still. Then he heard it, a soft scrape. He rolled off the bed just as a black blade sliced the air where his head had been. He hit the floor hard and looked up. Two figures in black armor stood above him. No insignia, no face. Assassins. He grabbed a nearby staff and swung it as one lunged. The weapon hit metal and sparks flew. Jackson fought with desperation. Training from Earth's military kicked in, but these were Zarian elite, silent, fast, deadly. A blade slashed his side. He cried out. The second assassin jumped, ready to end it. But then, a blast of energy threw both killers back. Smoke filled the room. Queen Varaya stood in the doorway, one hand still glowing from the energy burst. She didn't speak. She walked straight in and struck one assassin across the face. The helmet cracked. The other tried to run. She threw a spear and pinned him to the wall. Jackson lay bleeding, his hand over his side. "Why?" he gasped. "Who sent them?" The queen crouched beside him. Her eyes burned with anger. "My own court," she said. "They fear what you are." He looked at her, confused. "And what am I?" She reached forward and touched his face, gently wiping blood from his cheek. "You are the answer to a question our people stopped asking." Recovery and revelation. Days passed. Jackson lay in the palace medical wing, healing. Zarian doctors treated him in silence, unsure how to feel about him. The queen visited every day. Sometimes she spoke. Sometimes she just sat near him. One morning, she placed a small device in his hand. "A memory crystal," she said. "It shows visions of our past, of your bloodline." He activated it. Visions appeared, Zarian kings and queens, wars and peace treaties, and then a man who looked almost like Jackson, standing beside a Zarian queen of old. "I don't understand," Jackson said softly. "You are a descendant," the queen said. "A forgotten branch, not fully Zarian, not fully human. You are both." He stared at her. "What do you want from me now?" She didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, she said, "I want to see what happens when two empires stop fighting and start healing." The council rebellion begins. While the queen stayed near Jackson, others moved in secret. General Korvac gathered 5 other council members. "The queen is compromised," he growled. "She will hand our future to a hybrid." He held up a tablet. "This is a bloodline error. We must take control before she unites us with the humans, before she destroys our purity." He slammed the table. "I move for war." The look in his eyes. That evening, Jackson stood once more on the balcony, this time wearing a robe of Zarian silk. The queen joined him. "There will be resistance," she said quietly. "You've seen what they tried." "I don't blame them," Jackson replied. "Fear is loud. But peace needs courage." She looked at him. "What did I see in your eyes that day?" she asked. He turned to her, and for the first time, his voice cracked with emotion. "You saw someone who was willing to die, so no one else would have to. An assassin strikes, but he saved her life." The royal dining hall glittered with floating lanterns. Zarian nobles in long robes walked in silence, their eyes sharp, their minds busy. Golden dishes filled the long tables. Dancers moved like wind, slow and beautiful. 1,000 candles floated in the air, glowing with soft blue light. At the center of it all sat Queen Varia. Next to her, something the Empire had never seen before, a human guest of honor. Jackson Reed. He wore a deep black robe, his wounds mostly healed. His face still held pain, but his eyes had not changed. They were calm, steady, just like the night he proposed. Tension behind smiles. Whispers moved across the tables like snakes. Why is he here? The Queen grows weak. She stares at him too long. But Varia heard everything and said nothing. Jackson could feel the tension. It was thicker than the soup in front of him. But he didn't flinch. He had stood before monsters. Words could not shake him now. He leaned toward the Queen. "You don't need to do this," he whispered. "If your court doesn't want me, I do what I choose," she replied coldly. But her eyes softened when they met his. The assassin in the shadows. High above the hall, hidden among the ceiling beams, a figure moved in silence. His name was unknown, his face hidden, but his mission was clear. End the human, end the weakness, save the Empire. He didn't hold a blade. He didn't carry a gun. He had something worse. A pulse dart, tiny, silent, fast. It could pierce bone and vanish before anyone saw it. He aimed and waited. But then, the Queen did something unexpected. She turned to Jackson and offered her glass. "Share a toast," she said, loud enough for the nobles to hear. Jackson hesitated. Then he lifted his cup. Everyone washed. The assassin released the dart, but not at Jackson. At the Queen. The moment that changed everything. Time slowed. Jackson didn't think. His body moved before his mind did. He turned, knocked her cup away, and threw himself toward her. The pulse dart hit his shoulder. He fell. The Queen screamed, a sound no one in the Empire had ever heard. Guards jumped to their feet. Panic swept the hall. Jackson hit the floor hard. His breath caught. His fingers twitched. The dart had hit deep. Poison burned through his arm. The Queen knelt beside him, forgetting her throne, her people, everything. "Jackson," she whispered, "look at me, please." He blinked slowly, pain stealing his words. She looked up, eyes wide. "Find D.A. Shooter, truth in the pain." In the palace infirmary, the Queen waited alone beside his healing chamber. Her hands were shaking. The doctors had removed the dart, but the poison was rare, military grade. Zarian only. Only her inner court had access to it. That meant betrayal from someone very close. She looked at Jackson through the healing glass. His face was pale, his breathing slow, and in that moment, something inside her broke. Not as a queen, but as a woman. She reached out and touched the glass. "I don't care what blood runs through your veins," she whispered. "You risked everything. Again. For me." She turned to her guards. "Bring me General Korvac." A queen's wrath. Korvac stood tall when dragged before her, his robe still covered in golden trim. "I did nothing," he said. She stepped forward. "You sent the first assassins." He said nothing. "You used poison only my court can touch." Still silence. "I should end you now," she growled. But Korvac smiled. "Then do it, but your people will see you protecting a human over your own blood." The words hit deep. She froze. Korvac leaned closer. "You don't belong to yourself anymore, Varia. You belong to your throne." Jackson awakens. Later that night, the Queen sat alone in the healing room. She had dismissed everyone else. Jackson stirred. His fingers twitched. His eyes opened slowly. She was the first thing he saw. "Still alive," he joked weakly. She almost smiled. "You saved me." "I told you," he whispered. "I didn't come here to take your world. I came to hold your hand in it." Her breath caught. "I'm not supposed to feel anything," she said. "A queen must rule without attachment, without weakness." He turned his head, meeting her gaze. "Maybe love isn't weakness," he said. "Maybe it's the one thing that changes everything." The night sky. Later, they sat together on the palace roof. The stars stretched across the sky like rivers of fire. He leaned back, his arms still wrapped in healing cloth. "I used to look at these stars," Jackson said, "and wonder if anyone out there was lonely too." She looked at him quietly. Then she took his hand, just for a second, and in that quiet touch, something began. A secret rebellion grows. Far away, in the dark parts of the palace, a new figure stepped out of the shadows. A woman, Zarian noble, eyes like knives. "Korvac was weak," she said. "Now I lead." Others stepped forward, bowing. "The queen has fallen for the human," one whispered. "Then we must rise before she forgets who we are," the woman said. A new plan was born. This time, not just to kill, but to overthrow. She accepts his proposal, on one condition. The moon rose high above the Zarian palace. Its pale glow lit the sky, casting a silver glow over the darkened city below. It was a cold night, one that seemed to hold a quiet promise of change. The stars above shimmered, as if watching, waiting for the next act to unfold. Inside the palace, everything was still. But beneath the stillness, a storm brewed. The queen's decision. Queen Varia sat on the edge of her royal throne, her face cold. The weight of 1,000 years of history rested on her shoulders. But tonight, the empire was not her greatest worry. Jackson. He had saved her life twice now. His words had pierced through the icy shell she had built around her heart. His eyes, those quiet, confident eyes, had called out to something deep inside her, something she had buried long ago. She stared at the glass window before her, watching the moon's reflection in the water below. It felt impossible. What would it mean if she gave in? Her fingers drummed lightly against the armrest, a nervous habit she hadn't allowed herself in years. She'd known him only for days, yet his presence had already shaken her kingdom's foundations. Jackson's struggle. Far across the palace, in a room that once felt like a prison to him, Jackson lay awake. He had no armor, no weapons, only the remnants of his human will to survive. The poison had left him weak. The assassin's strike had nearly taken his life. But it wasn't just the poison that burned within him. It was the feeling, the growing ache. His body had healed, but his mind was still fighting with something he couldn't control. Love. The word felt strange, like a foreign language in his mouth. It had never been part of his plan. He had never come here for romance. He came for peace, for unity between two worlds that had been at war for far too long. But now, with Queen Varia so close, so powerful, and yet still so vulnerable, he felt his heart swell in a way he could not understand. What would this mean for them? He had no answers, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't leave. Not now. Not when she needed him the most. The Queen's test. The Queen had made her decision. She couldn't deny the pull she felt toward Jackson any longer. He had been through trials that no one should have to endure, yet he still remained steady. He had proven his loyalty, his worth, and his courage time and again. But she needed more than words. She needed proof. The path of souls. It was an ancient trial, one that even the bravest Zarian warriors feared. To walk it was to face your deepest fears, your darkest secrets. It tested not your strength, but your soul. Those who survived were marked for life, bound forever to the empire. Those who failed were lost to the winds, never to be seen again. It was not a trial for the faint-hearted. And yet, she was offering it to him. The path of souls. The next morning, the sun had just begun to rise. The air was sharp with the bite of morning frost. A cold wind swept through the Zarian mountains, howling through the stone streets of the palace. Jackson stood at the base of the Path of Souls, a dark, narrow passage that twisted into the heart of the mountain. It was said to be cursed. No one had survived it without being marked. He stared ahead, the shadows of the cliffs looming over him. Beside him, Queen Varia stood. Her face was still and unreadable, but her eyes were full of something Jackson had never seen before. Hope. "I don't understand," he said, turning to her. "What do you expect me to find in there?" She looked at him, her gaze steady. "The truth," she said softly. "The truth about who you are, and who you can become." Jackson took a deep breath. He wasn't afraid of the trial. He wasn't afraid of anything anymore. But this, the truth, it was something he hadn't thought about before. "Whatever happens," he said, "I won't leave." Varia gave a small nod, then turned away. "You'll walk the path alone," she said. "The trial begins." The path of souls was dark, suffocating. As Jackson stepped inside, the air seemed to thicken around him. The shadows twisted like living things, and the silence, it was the kind of silence that made your skin crawl. The walls closed in. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. This wasn't just for him anymore. This was for her. The first challenge came quickly. A vision. He was back on Earth, standing in front of his childhood home. His mother was there, but her eyes were empty, staring straight through him. "Why didn't you save me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. His heart raced. "I tried," he whispered back, but his words felt hollow. Then she was gone. The house faded away, and he was alone again, lost in a fog of guilt and regret. The trial wasn't easy. He faced his deepest fears, his failure, his loneliness, the choices he'd made that had led him here. But with every challenge, with every step, something inside him changed. The path was teaching him something he hadn't known before, the strength to forgive himself. The final challenge. After what felt like hours, Jackson finally reached the end of the path. The darkness lifted, and a blinding light filled his vision. He stumbled, but he didn't fall. And there, standing in the center of the light, was Queen Varia. Her face was softer now, no longer a cold ruler, but the woman he had come to know in the brief time they'd spent together. "Jackson," she said, her voice full of warmth, "you have passed." He looked at her, still panting from the journey. "I'm not who you think I am," he said quietly. Her eyes met his. "You are exactly who I need you to be," she said, stepping forward. For the first time, Jackson saw it clearly. The truth. Her eyes softened as she reached out and took his hand. "You have passed the trial," she said, "but this is not just for you." Her fingers tightened around his. "If you choose to stay with me, it will be on one condition, one promise." Jackson's heart raced. "What is it?" he asked. She looked into his eyes, her voice steady, full of a quiet power. "You must choose me and our people. Both. Forever. There can be no turning back." The decision. Jackson's breath caught. His heart pounded in his chest. It was more than he had ever expected, more than he had ever dreamed. But he knew, deep down, that he could never walk away. "I choose you," he whispered. And in that moment, everything changed. A human king beside the alien queen. The Zarian Empire had never seen a moment like this. The twin moons hung high above the palace, their light casting an eerie glow over the city. The streets were quiet, as though the entire world was holding its breath. Inside the royal throne room, the air was thick with tension. Today was the day that would change everything. Today was the day the human would become more than a visitor in their world. Today, he would stand beside Queen Varia, not just as her ally, but as her equal. The throne room. Queen Varia stood at the center of the grand chamber, her back straight, her eyes fixed ahead. She wore her royal gown of silver and black, its intricate designs shimmering in the candlelight. Her crown gleamed with the fire of 1,000 years of rule. But today, for the first time, she did not feel the weight of the throne. Today, she felt something else. Hope. The grand doors of the throne room opened. Jackson entered. He was dressed in the same dark robes he had worn the first day they met, the same quiet strength in his eyes. There were no weapons on him, only the knowledge that today he would face his greatest test. He walked toward the Queen. The court was silent, their eyes fixed on the two figures at the center of the room. There was fear in their eyes, but there was also something else: uncertainty. They didn't know what to expect. No one had ever seen a human stand before a Zarian queen as an equal, and no one had ever seen a queen look at a human the way Viria looked at Jackson. She raised her hand, and the room fell into complete silence. "Jackson Reed," she said, her voice carrying across the room, "you have proven your courage. You have walked the path of souls, faced your fears, and shown me the truth of your heart. You have stood beside me when the world would have crushed you." Her eyes softened as she gazed at him. "I choose you," she said simply, yet the words were more powerful than any proclamation she had ever made. Jackson stood before her, his heart beating in his chest. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was not just about him anymore. It was about them, about their worlds. And in some ways, it was about the future of all life in the galaxy. "I choose you too," he whispered, his voice full of raw emotion, "not just as a queen, but as someone who is more than just a ruler, someone who is real." The crowning. Viria stepped forward, holding out a crown that had once belonged to her mother, an ancient piece of Zarian history, passed down through generations. Its gold shimmered with a life of its own. It wasn't meant for a human. But today, the crown would be shared. Together. Jackson knelt before her. "Your people will never accept me," he said quietly, his eyes on the floor. "Not at first," she agreed. "But change is never easy." She placed the crown on his head. The room was silent. For a moment, it felt like the universe itself paused. Then, as the first rays of sunlight began to creep through the windows, the court erupted in whispers. Some spoke in awe, others in disbelief. But the decision had been made. Queen Viria raised her hand, and the noise stopped. "The galaxy will change," she declared, her voice echoing through the halls. "Not with bloodshed, not with war, but with love and with unity, a human and a Zarian, together. This is the future of our people. This is the future of all the stars." The court watched in stunned silence. The betrayal. But not all in the court were ready for this change. In the shadows, General Korvac stood with a group of conspirators, his claws clenched tight around the edges of the stone pillar. "She has betrayed us," Korvac growled, his eyes filled with hatred. "She has chosen the human over her own people." One of his allies stepped forward, their face hidden behind a mask of darkness. "What should we do, General?" Korvac's lips curled into a smile. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "We will show the Queen that the galaxy cannot be ruled by a half-blood." A new threat. Outside the palace, the sky darkened. Zarian ships, sleek and deadly, cut through the clouds, their engines roaring with power. They were the ships of the rebellion, those who opposed the Queen's rule. They had been waiting for this moment, the moment when the human would become too great a threat to ignore. Jackson stood at the balcony, looking out at the ships in the distance. He could feel the weight of what was coming. "They are coming for us," he said quietly, turning to Viria. She stood beside him, her face set in determination. "I knew this would happen," she said softly. "They will not accept us. They will not accept you." Jackson looked at her, his eyes filled with resolve. "Then we fight. Together." Viria nodded, her eyes flashing with a fire that matched his. "Together." The battle begins. The first wave of rebel ships attacked, firing blasts that shook the very foundation of the palace. But the Zarian Royal Guard was ready. The palace's weapon systems activated, lighting up the sky with flashes of energy. Jackson stood alongside the Queen, his heart racing. His hands gripped the energy blade they had given him, a weapon he had never imagined using. But today, it would not just be a symbol. It would be a tool to protect everything they had built. The battle raged in the skies above the palace. Zarian soldiers fought side by side with humans from Earth who had come to support their new king. The galaxy watched as the impossible began to unfold. Jackson and Varia fought together, side by side. She led with strength, he with courage. They were an unstoppable force. The final stand. The fight lasted hours, but at last, General Korvac's fleet was defeated. The rebel forces, once powerful and united in their hate, were scattered, their ships falling one by one from the sky. Jackson stood at the center of the courtyard, his heart still racing. Beside him, Varia stood tall, her regal demeanor never once faltering. They had won. But the victory was not just theirs. It was the beginning of something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. A human king beside a Zarian queen. The future unfolds. As the stars above Zaria shimmered, Jackson and Varia stood together, looking out at the world they had just saved. "We did it," Jackson said softly. "Together," Varia replied, her hand slipping into his. And in that moment, they both knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was theirs to shape, not through war, but through love and unity. And in their eyes, the future was as bright as the stars themselves.